Hello everybody. So I've started moving stuff from an old channel over here, and back in July of this year, 2021, Rwanda was going back into a lockdown due to COVID. So we've been through a couple and then there was another one coming. And I decided to kind of amuse myself. I couldn't go out anywhere, so I was sitting in Kigali and I decided to do a desktop tour of some of my favourite things to do in Rwanda when the country is open. Now, I'm in the UK at the moment. I'm back for the first time in 3 years, seeing my family over Christmas, which is wonderful. And I hope that when I go back to Rwanda, I've now got a new camera, I can take you around these places for real and take some nicer videos. But it was just a way for me to, play around with editing over the lockdown and, just kind of talk a bit about my favourite things to do in Rwanda, where I've lived on and off for the past, I guess, about 14 years. So I've put them all together here, which has created a really, really long video, and I know you probably don't want to sit through 4 hours of tour around Rwanda, but what I've done is below I've put timestamps so you can skip between chapters. So we've got 5 provinces, we've got north, south, east, west and Kigali. I've covered each of those. You can choose which to look at below, and within that what specifically to look at in each of those regions. So, it's not the most polished videos. It was just me messing around, but I hope you enjoy. And if you're coming to Rwanda once things start to open up again, hopefully it will give you some ideas on what to go and have a look at. Hi everybody. So it's kind of a cloudy, overcast day in Kigali today. It looks like we might be going into some form of lockdown again due to a spike in COVID cases, and vaccine is quite hard to get here at the moment. So we're all kind of, a bit tired. We've all been cooped up for a really long time, and I thought that I could help get over that and feel like I'm out and about again by doing a short desktop tour of Rwanda. So I thought what I would do is share with you some of my favourite places to go in each of the 5 provinces, so north, south, east, west and Kigali. So when people come to visit me, these are the places that I like to take them. And yeah, so I was going to just do that. I've always taken more photographs than videos, so it's probably going to feel a bit more like looking through my photo album than a nice glossy YouTube video, but we work with what we've got. So yeah, I was going to kick off today by looking at the Northern Province. And now, when we talk about the Northern Province, that's usually where I think about 90% of foreign tourists go, because that is where Volcanoes National Park is. So if you think Rwanda, you usually think mountain gorillas, and that's where they are, is in Northern Province. So they are in the national park, which is close to the city of Musanze. Now, I've been really lucky. I have actually visited the gorillas a couple of times in the past. I know that the price has gone up quite a bit in the past few years, so it's maybe a little bit prohibitive. It's about $1,500 for a foreign tourist. Well, actually, I think for anybody now to visit them. Though at the moment, during COVID, there has been a discount. For a while, it was $500 per person, I think, to go and visit them. But that will go back up again once everything opens to international travel again. Now, I know that is a lot of money, but I mean, you can also, if you don't want to spend that much, you can also go and visit the park, either just to go hiking, or you can go and visit the Golden Monkeys, which are a lot cheaper. I'd have to check the price, I'll put everything below. And you can have a very similar experience. You go walking in the mountains, it's absolutely beautiful, and hang out with some primates. So go visit our cousins. But
But today I'm not really going to talk too much about Musanze and the gorillas. There are some other things that you can do in Musanze, but I can't really talk about those because I haven't done them myself. One of them is the caves. There are some caves that you can go and have a look around. And the other one, which I really want to do once COVID is over, is you can canoe down the river in Musanze, and I would really like to do that. I'm looking forward to things opening up a bit and, you know, vaccine being available and being able to go and do that. But today I thought we could go a little bit sideways. So from Musanze, hanging a left and heading over to Gisenyi. Now, I am actually cheating just a little bit. Technically speaking, Gisenyi is in Western Province, at the very northern part of Western Province. So you've got Gisenyi and you've got Musanze, which is actually in Northern Province. But when I was trying to think about things to do in Northern Province, beyond the gorillas and Musanze, I struggled a little bit. So because I'm doing another video all about Western Province and Karongi and everything there, I thought that I'd just mess with geography a little bit and talk about Gisenyi as being in northern Rwanda, because I always think about it that way because you have to travel north for a very long time to get there. So I am sorry about that, and I hope that you forgive me. And you might have heard about this in the news recently because it's only a few miles across the border from Nyiragongo volcano in DRC. So you've got Goma here and you've got Gisenyi here, so they're very, very close. And when the volcano went off, a lot of people sought refuge in Rwanda, in Gisenyi. So you've probably heard of Gisenyi on the news recently. On the whole, though, it's a really amazing little place where a lot of people who live in Kigali will go there for a break. It's about 3.5 hours drive from Kigali. And in normal times, when the plague isn't happening, there are really, really good public transport networks across the country. So you can easily hop on a bus very cheaply, you know, for less than about $5 and go all the way up to Gisenyi. So there are kind of three parts to Gisenyi. You've got the main town, which is just sort of a normal town, with an exception, which I'll tell you about in a moment. Then you've got the beach stretch where you've got these bars on the sandy beach and you can just sit and, you know, drink a beer and watch the sunset. And then you've got this sort of area which is over the other side of the bay, where you can find somewhere nice to stay, somewhere nice to eat, and a beautiful pool, which I'll get to in a minute. So the part about the main town, for me, I wouldn't say it's the most beautiful town in Rwanda. It's just a town, but it has got some kind of impressive features. The main one being the volcano. Now, I know it's probably a bit distasteful to be pushing this as a tourist attraction after what's just happened. But before it erupted and before it became a major humanitarian issue, it used to be quite common for people just to stand and stare at the volcano. It's one of the strangest sights that you will see is you can stand on Gisenyi High Street, and on a clear day you can look down the high street and there is a volcano. You know, I used to live in Cardiff in Wales, and you walk down the high street and at the end of the high street there is a giant castle, which I always thought was pretty impressive. I think this tops that. I think this is even more strange and slightly surreal. You know, you're just standing there looking at the volcano. And at night time, and again, it has to be clear, but at night time you can drive out to the airport and you used to be able to stand there and just the sky would just glow red. And you could just stand there and look at this glow in the sky. From what I've heard, after the eruption, there is now no lava in the crater. So I don't know if that's still possible anymore. I need to ask somebody who's up there. So maybe I'm talking about something that you can't actually do anymore. So for places to stay in Gisenyi, I would kind of recommend two. There is Kivu View Hotel, or Kivu Peace Hotel, which is a fairly straightforward hotel, but it has got the most beautiful view from the top. So there's a little restaurant on the very top where you have your breakfast and you can look out across the bay, across the water. It's really pretty. I would suggest that you take cash because their connection doesn't always work. So make sure you've got enough cash on you, or you can pop into town to the ATM when you're ready to check out. The other place that is kind of an institution is around the other side of the bay. So Kivu Peace Hotel is very close to the beach area. You can just walk down the hill and you're near the bars on the beach. Whereas the other one is Inzu Lodge, which is on the other side of the bay, and it's just really lovely. It's an eco lodge. You can either stay in sort of glamping in a tent or get a little sort of personalised cabin. It's just a really beautiful place as well, a very different vibe. So Kivu Peace is very much your standard hotel vibe, whereas Inzu it's just really pretty. It's a much more laid back kind of wooden and grassland environment. And again, a really nice view of the water. However, it is on the opposite side of town to where the bars are on the beach. So it's kind of a little bit difficult. If you want to go and sit on the beach and watch the sunset, you might want to leave whilst it's still light to get back to your accommodation, just because the road is very narrow and the lighting isn't great when it's dark, and there's a lot of people kind of wandering around on the road at that time of night. So it's kind of up to you. However, if you do stay at Inzu, there are a couple of really nice bars and restaurants over that side as well. So Gisenyi is probably best known for its beachside bars, and there's just this lovely stretch of sand, and there aren't that many bars. It kind of feels like there's more than there actually are. There's maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 of them, but they're just in a line, and you can just wander along the beach and just go in and out of them, and sit and eat some sambaza, which is fried fish, drink a beer and just watch the sunset. At night time it can get a little bit loud. I mean, Gisenyi is definitely known as more of a party town compared to somewhere like Kironge, Kibuye, which I'll talk about later, which is more of the relaxed, quiet area. And, you know, a lot of young people head up there on a weekend and they have festivals. Now, the thing about Lake Kivu is that it's so big that it's actually influenced by the moon. So you get these waves. You're there with a massive inland lake and it's got waves like the sea. So it's really kind of strange. It's really relaxing. It's a really nice place to hang out. Now, another place that's within walking distance of the bars is Serena Grand Hotel. So Serena has a couple of hotels. It's got a hotel in Kigali. It's got a hotel in Gisenyi. And if you go into the back garden where the pool is, and you go down the steps by the pool, you will come to another private beach that belongs to the hotel. And again, that's just a lovely place to sit. It's a man-made, sandy, golden sandy beach, and you can sit there with your beer, and they also do amazing apple pie. Now, you can go swimming in Lake Kivu. I've done it a few times. But here in Rwanda, we do have something called schistosomiasis, or Bilharzia, which is a little worm that is spread by water snails. And if it gets into you, it can lay eggs, and that can cause some internal complications. So the good news is that you can completely deworm yourself with a little packet of medication from a pharmacy. I've forgotten the name, I'll put it below. And, you know, it's a good idea if you do go swimming regularly in Rwanda, then before you go home, it's probably a good idea just to take the medication and flush it out, just to make sure that you're completely okay. But as well, Serena has got a swimming pool, so you might as well just use that. And, you know, anything that's chlorinated, you'll be fine. Now, talking about chlorinated, another one of my favourite places in Gisenyi is just around the bay, right next to Inzu Lodge, is a hotel called Nirvana. and it has got the most beautiful infinity pool. It's absolutely gorgeous, and you know, you can just sit in the water and rest there and just look out across Lake Kivu, and it's really, really nice. Unfortunately, sometimes they do blast music. It's kind of a thing in Rwanda that if you've got a swimming pool, you have to have like thumping music, which, you know, isn't the most peaceful and relaxing thing. But often you're the only people there, so you can just say, you know, could you turn it down a little bit? So they've got drinks, they've got food, you can spend an entire afternoon there. And when you've finished, if you go downstairs and you just go left, and you keep walking maybe about 10 minutes, then on your right you'll come to somewhere, it's kind of an old institution called Paradis Malahide, and they've got just the most lovely food, and again a garden where you can just sit on the shore, watch the sunset. Sometimes you can hear the fishermen and they start to sing as they're going out for the catch, and it's just a really delightful place to end your evening. So if you're staying over around the bay, in Zoo Lodge, you can go and spend the day in the pool. You can go to Paradis Malahide, have some drinks, watch the sunset before going home again. And that's really, really, really nice. Something else that you can do in Gisenyi is the Congo Nile Trail. So the Congo Nile Trail is this hiking, more usually bicycling trail that goes from Gisenyi in the top north of Rwanda through down to Kironge Kibuye, which is sort of in the middle, all the way down to the very south. I think it goes all the way down to Cyangugu at the very, very south of Rwanda. You know, and if you are extremely fit and enjoy bicycling, that's something that you can do. There used to be a company called Rwandan Adventures in Gisenyi. I think they're still there, I'm not sure, I'll check and put the link below. But you can hire a bicycle there and a guide, and you can go all the way down. I did once try walking part of it with a friend. I'm not sure that I recommend that. I mean, you can hike it if you really want to, but there aren't really that many places, I mean, to stop off and get food or water. It's a bit tough going, I think. So I only hiked it for a day, and then my friend and I ended up hiring a boat to take us back to the main part of town. So we cheated a little bit, but one day of hiking was fun. I'm not sure I'd want to do all of it that way. Yeah, but if you're really into fitness and bicycling, you can certainly do that. So the last thing that I probably mention about Gisenyi is Funda Tea Estate. Now, if you just drive up from Kigali straight up to Gisenyi, you won't really notice this, but if you're coming up to Gisenyi from Kibuye, Kironge, there is a road now that goes along the coast, and as you come in to Gisenyi that way, you go straight past Funda Tea Estate and you go through fields and fields of tea, and it is so beautiful. So whilst you're visiting Rwanda, you might want to go and have a look at a tea estate. You used to be able to do that at Funda. I'm not sure what the situation during COVID is at the moment or what it will be like after. I have found one website that offers to organise that trip for you, so I will put that link below. I think as well though, you can just call Funda and say, excuse me, can I come on a tea visit? They only used to do it on certain days, but it was quite cheap from what I remember. It wasn't that expensive. So just book in and go and have a look. You can take a tour of the factory, see how they dry and process the tea, and yeah, it's just a really, really nice experience. So you can check that out whilst you're there. So this has been more of a discussion of Gisenyi, but it's pretty much the main place that people go to get away from Kigali for a weekend, let the hair down, party a little bit. The bars are usually full in normal times, and hopefully will be again one day. And it's just a kind of a relaxed little town. It's nice. And then, of course, you know, the other big part of Northern Province, as I mentioned, are the gorillas, and I will do a different video about that. And one last thing that I would just mention is a sort of a national institution called Nyiringarama. So I'm just going to mention it because I like it. Nyiringarama is basically Rwanda. It was Rwanda's first ever service station. Now that doesn't sound that impressive, but it's somewhere that absolutely everybody knows. If you're going north, then 1 hour out of Kigali, you'll come to a little service station on the right. It'll be surrounded by National Express buses, cars. Everybody travelling north or south is going through Nyiringarama, and they have like a little open barbecue going on, and you can get ibirai. So you can get ibirai is just basically like fried whole potato. It's really good. Brochettes, which is skewered meat, goat or beef. And you know, a cold drink. You can buy fresh fruit, you can buy bread, you can get things that you want there. So you know, everybody loves Nyiringarama, everybody will stop off there. Little tip, if you are going, there are public bathrooms downstairs. If you want to be a bit cheeky, you can go up the stairs. So there's these circular steps upstairs to a restaurant, and if you go to the very back of the restaurant, just on the left is a little private and very nicely kept bathroom. So you can be a bit cheeky and just sneak up there and just buy a drink or something on the way out, just to be a customer. So that's a little Kigali secret. But yeah, yeah. So this definitely hasn't been an exhaustive tour of Northern Province. I know there's a lot of things that I've missed out. Tell me about them. If there's something that you think I should have included, or there's something you'd like to add, just drop a comment below. And if you do go off and try any of these things, let me know how it goes. So enjoy. They're just some suggestions of things that I quite like. So I hope you enjoy them too. Hi, so continuing the desktop tour of Rwanda. So last time we went north to Musanze and Gisenyi, and this time we're going to go east. So the north of Rwanda is known for the gorillas, and the east of Rwanda is mostly known for Akagera National Park. Now, this is Rwanda's game drive. This is Rwanda's safari park. Now, Akagera was the first ever safari park I ever went on in 2007-2008 when I first arrived. And I'd never been on safari before that. And it was really good fun. So back then, there was a group of about 8 of us, and we hired an old bisi, which is an old kind of like a tin can bus, which used to be the standard form of bus in Rwanda, but now like we have air-conditioned, comfortable buses. Some of them even have Wi-Fi now. But back then, it was like a little tin can on wheels, and we all just kind of climbed in and hung out the windows and looked at the animals. So really that was the first safari I ever went on. And I've been to Akagera, I think about 4 times now, and I've been to Masai Mara once. So I had a friend who was a tour guide in Kenya, and one of our friends in Kenya was leaving, so we all went over and did a girls' weekend away at Masai, and it was absolutely amazing. Seriously, incredible experience. So staying in the old sort of camping tents at a game lodge. We saw lions, cheetah who had just caught a gazelle, hyenas. I think we saw pretty much everything apart from rhino. And it was just utterly incredible. So I'm going to be honest about this. I think if you're coming to East Africa specifically to go on a game drive, specifically to go on safari, then you're more likely to go to Serengeti in Tanzania, or the Masai Mara in Kenya, which is the northern tip of Serengeti, or maybe somewhere like Queen Elizabeth National Park in Uganda. But I think if you're coming to Rwanda anyway, and you just want something to do for the day, then Akagera is an absolutely perfectly fine and lovely safari. The thing about Akagera is that it's quite close to Kigali. I mean, Rwanda is quite small, so everything is within easy distance of everything else. So if you leave Kigali at around 4 o'clock in the morning, you can go and do an entire game drive at Akagera and come home in the evening and be back in your own bed. Or you can go to Akagera and you can camp for a weekend. So, you know, it's a nice park, but I think if you want the full sort of safari, Serengeti, Masai Mara might be a better idea. And the only reason I say that is there's sort of two small problems with Akagera. Is the first one is that it's kind of hilly and there's a lot of brush. So if you're on safari in Masai Mara, it's a flat plain. You can see for miles the wildebeest, you know, the lions, everything's just sort of wandering around on the plain. Whereas I think part of the problem with Akagera is just there's so much brushland that if you go, especially once the sun's up and all the animals go to seek shelter, it's kind of hard to spot things. And the second thing about Akagera is that sometimes it has a kind of a significant tsetse fly problem. So tsetse flies are basically like horse flies in the UK. If you get bitten by one, you know it. I mean, it hurts. And there are certain times of the year where there's just so many of them there, and they do put up traps to catch the tsetse fly. They're not harmful or anything, but they're numerous. So part of the problem then is that you kind of prefer to go through with your windows wound up, and you don't kind of get that same sort of open top experience as comfortably. So I know that I'm not exactly selling Akagera. What I mean is, if you are in Rwanda anyway, definitely go to Akagera, but maybe don't come to Rwanda specifically to go to Akagera. But there have been some big improvements over the past years. In 2015, they imported lions, I think, from South Africa into the park. So they reintroduced lions and reintroduced rhinos. Now, again, I've been to Akagera 4 times. I've never seen a lion, and I've never seen an elephant. And that has been the bane of it, because my mum came to visit in 2019. She loves elephants. I really wanted to go and find the elephants. And I went with my friend Emmy, who runs Believe Tour and Travels. I'll put his number below. And he drove us around for the day looking for elephants. And I was thinking, my mum's with me. I'm definitely going to see an elephant this time. I never saw an elephant. So I saw them in Maasai, but I've never seen an elephant in Akagera, though they do exist. But every single time that my friend Emmy goes to Akagera, he sees an elephant. So he went the other week and he sent me a picture of the elephants he saw. So there he is, Emmy looking smug as, whilst he's taking pictures of elephants that I have never seen. So I like Akagera. I have a lot of love for the place. It was the first safari I've ever been on, and it's so conveniently close to Kigali. So, if you want to go camping for the weekend, you can. And if you just want to do a day trip, you can do that as well. So I like it. So what else can you do in Eastern Province? Well, there's something that I really like that I don't know if that many people know about. So about 45 minutes out of Kigali on the road towards Akagera, you come to a little place called Bugesera. My friend Jocelyn and her husband run Bugesera Lodge, which is an absolutely delightful place to stay for a weekend or overnight. They have beautiful little rooms in private round huts, gorgeous view of the wetlands, and you can also just pop out there and book in for lunch. So I'm just going to take a moment to appreciate the food, because Jocelyn's from France. She does the most incredible food. So let's just take a moment to appreciate that. So I sometimes go out there to fix their piano, and she always feeds me really well, so I love it there. So if you want to go out for lunch, you just need to book like a day or two in advance to make sure that they've got the supplies in. So something that I would never have known about unless Jocelyn had told me is, if you go outside the lodge, turn left, you go down quite a steep hill, so you have to be quite nimble, but you come to the wetlands and there's this bridge. And it goes for maybe about, I guess, a kilometre across the wetlands. And it's entirely made from the leaves of the reeds. So the local people of Bugesera, they just pile the leaves on top of each other to create this kind of springy, bouncing, floating bridge, and you can feel it bouncing as you're walking across it, but people ride bicycles across there. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, it's just the most amazing thing, and you know, nobody ever talks about it. I've never seen it in a tourist brochure or anything like that, because I guess people living there just think, well, it's a bridge, you know, why would you want to look at it? But I've never seen a bridge like that, and I was like, this is cool. So the thing is, it's best to do it firstly in the dry season, because when it rains too much, I think it can get a little waterlogged. So maybe the dry season and early in the morning, because as I said, it's quite a trek down there and it's quite a trek back up again. So, you know, it gets very hot and very humid down there quickly because it's in the wetlands. So the best thing is, if you're staying overnight at the lodge, get up early, go and walk across the bridge and back, and then you can climb back up and have breakfast at the lodge after that. I think Jocelyn said it's something like 100 francs just to pass over, but there wasn't anybody there collecting money when I was there, but just take some spare change. It is, I like it. I just think it's really unusual, and I think it's one of these little hidden gems of Rwanda that, like, you wouldn't know it was there unless you knew it was there and somebody had told you. So if you're passing that way, do go. And the other reason to stay around that area is, I mean, I'm going to talk about Rwanda Memorial and the Genocide Memorial when I talk about Kigali. But there are two quite famous memorials out there, Nyamata and Ntarama. So they're really, really close to each other. You can visit both of them. They're right next to each other. They're full on. You know, there's no easy way to put that. They are quite graphic. One of them is a church where people crowded into and they were locked in and grenades were thrown in. So inside you find a lot of the clothes that they were wearing piled up in the church. You find there's an underground area with quite a graphic story of a woman who was killed there. And then there are some kind of two mass graves out the back. And the other one is a similar situation. It's a lot, but you know, it's important to know about these things. It's important to show respect, to visit these places, to learn about the history, to listen to the history. Yeah, so you can go and visit those. And there's also, on a slightly lighter note, if you carry on a bit further, you come to a massive, shiny new hotel called Golden Tulip. And I know about Golden Tulip because I was once delivering training there for UNDP, I think it was. And I did a weekend's training there. And out of my window, I could see the most incredible swimming pool that I've ever seen in Rwanda. I mean, we've got some nice swimming pools. I talked about the one in Gisenyi in the last video. There's a tennis club in Kigali, which I'll get onto, but this is huge. I think it might be the biggest swimming pool that we've actually got in Rwanda. I don't know. I could be corrected. So, you know, when I was there working, there was nobody else there. It was just this huge blue expanse of pool, and it was beautiful. And I hadn't taken my swimming costume, so... but I went there again with a friend a couple of years ago, and unfortunately they were doing the thing that I talked about in the last video with the thumping music. So it's definitely a thing in Rwanda, if there's a swimming pool, that somebody will bring a sort of a boom box, or, oh my goodness, how 80s was that? Whatever the young kids are using nowadays, like a boom box. But anyway, it was very crowded and very loud and not really that nice. But I think, you know, if there's not going to be that much tourism once COVID opens up again, it's probably back on the list of places to go. So, you know, you can go swimming, you can visit the memorial, you can walk across the bridge, you can have something nice to eat at Bugesera, and you can go off to Akigera Lodge after that. So one more thing that I'm going to add about Eastern Province that I really like, that maybe not too many people know about. You can't really talk about Eastern Province without mentioning Lake Muhazi. So Lake Muhazi is a really long lake in Eastern Province, and I think the president has got a house at the far end of it, but it's very long, and it's got like these fingers of sort of water that come out, so all of these kind of inland little lakey places that's just really nice to explore. And at the beginning of the year, my friend Maya was visiting, and it was her birthday. So we Airbnb'd a place on the Musha side of Lake Muhazi, and it was beautiful. I mean, really just beautiful. We had a big garden on the lake. We took a boat ride, and it was really, really beautiful. And then, as happens in Kigali and in Rwanda more broadly, we kind of joke it's a bit of a village because there's sort of one degree of separation from everybody. Is we went walking one day and we saw like what looked like a little sort of a bar camping area, and we went in there, and it turned out to be run by this guy called JP, who randomly used to be one of Maya's Spanish students like about 10 years ago. So that's what I mean by it's a bit of a village. Is anywhere that you go in Rwanda, if you've lived here long enough, you'll probably bump into somebody that you know. And so, you know, it's a nice reunion. We sat, we had a few beers and a bit of a chat. He's got the coolest little underground beer cooler. And he actually runs this really, really cute campground, and I've never seen anything quite like this in Rwanda before. And he's basically converted like an old camper van and sort of old vehicles into places to sleep right down on the water side, and it was just so cool. And it's also, you can, from there you can see sort of, there's a little fish farm in Muhazi, and so you can order fresh fish as well. So I just wanted to mention that because I thought it was so unusual and so cool. So it's not really open at the moment, the whole COVID thing, everything's closed. So, you know, when things start to open up again, I've put his number below. You could give him a call and say, you know, are you open again? What are your rates? So I'm hoping it's going to survive COVID because it's so unusual and so artistic and just really cute. So yeah, here's hoping that's going to survive. Now, if you watched my other video about northern Rwanda, I did mention about the swimming situation. So it's Rwanda, we have a little worm, Bilharzia, which is spread by water snails, and if you go swimming, you know, there's a chance you can get it, but you can also deworm yourself with medication from the pharmacy. And unfortunately, I would probably say don't go swimming in Muhazi, just because I think the likelihood of getting Bilharzia there is pretty high, because when you stand on the water's edge, you can literally see the snails just floating past. There is actually a water sports centre on Lake Muhazi, but I don't think anybody really goes there to get in the water. So it's kind of frustrating because it looks beautiful and it looks like you just want to throw yourself in there. But instead you can take a boat ride. There are plenty of boats on Lake Muhazi. You can call one and go on this little boat ride. So I'd maybe stick to that instead. If you do decide, if it's too much of a temptation and you dive in, just deworm yourself afterwards. I've put the information on that below. But yeah, that's pretty much Eastern Province for me. So camping on the side of Lake Muhazi, you know, it's a beautiful experience, and Akigera National Park, and walking across the very, very cool floating bridge of Bugesera. So again, if I've missed anything out that you really think should be included in Eastern Province, do drop a line below. And if you go off and you try any of these things, let me know how it goes. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. And sorry, just to add a little thing that I always forget to do, if you've enjoyed this video, if it's been helpful in any way, if you could just give it a like and maybe subscribe, that'd be great, thanks. Hello everybody, we're now back in full lockdown in Rwanda, in Kigali, which we sort of saw coming, spiking COVID cases. But I thought that I'd take this opportunity to continue my desktop tour of Rwanda and looking at some of the places that I like to go when everything is open and travel is normal. So we've already done Northern Province and Gisenyi, we've done Eastern Province and Akagera, so now I'm taking a little look at Southern Province. Now, Southern Province has by far my favourite tourist attraction in the whole of Rwanda. It's called Nyanza Mwami Palace, or Mwami meaning king, so the old king's palace. And it's amazing. Most people who come to Rwanda, they'll spend a few days in Kigali, go and see the gorillas or the golden monkeys, and then leave. And I think that Nyanza Mwami Palace is one of those places that is just underrated, underknown about, and anybody coming to Rwanda really should go and see it. It's about a 2.5 to 3 hour drive from Kigali, so you can do it in a day. And the part that I love about it is it's just the historical aspect and how well and nicely it's presented. So it's one of those places that you definitely want to go and take pictures of. When you arrive, there's a lovely cafe there, you can sit and have a coffee, and then you're shown around a really beautiful old traditional palace. So this is the type of palace that the kings of Rwanda lived in for hundreds of years, and it's absolutely beautiful. And especially on a hot day, you just take off your shoes and you step inside this beautiful reed building, and it's cool and it's shaded, and there's so much interesting history behind it. You can see the bed where the king used to sleep. You can see other buildings in the complex. So there was a young girl, I think she was supposed to be a virgin, who looked after the milk, and a young boy, I think he was supposed to have been a eunuch, but I'm not too sure, as some guides did say that, who looked after the beer. So the milk lady and the beer guy could never get together, and basically they had to remain chaste. So you have the king's beer and the milk for the palace, because milk was considered a very, very big deal. It's considered to be a sign, I suppose, of wealth and health, and there's a whole ritual around how you're supposed to drink it. So you're supposed to sit down when you drink it, both hands, and you have to finish all of the milk, because it's considered either bad manners or possibly bad luck if you leave any. And it's fascinating to learn. I love folklore, I love traditional stuff and stories, so to me that's a really interesting insight into an older part of Rwanda. And again, that's why I really like this place. Is I think, you come to Rwanda, and especially to Kigali, and it's amazing how modern and how built up and how shiny new everything looks. So you see modern Rwanda when you come to Kigali. And then you visit the memorials, which I will talk about more in a later video, and you're very acutely aware of the very recent past of Rwanda. And I think what I really love about Nyanza is that now you see the ancient history as well, so you get the whole timeline. It's like if you go to London, you'd see modern London and the arts, culture and the scene, and you'd know about the recent past. You could go to the London War Museum and you could learn about the UK during World War I, World War II. And then you've got the ancient history, so you've got the Tower of London, or you've got the London dungeons, and you can kind of look around and you can get a sense of ancient history. And so that's what I really like in Rwanda. I think if you're coming here, you want to see the modern age, you want to learn about the recent past, and you want to see the ancient past and get that whole kind of breadth of what a country is and has been. So yeah, I really like it. Now, as well as looking around the old traditional palace, there's also a fairly modern stone palace that was built in the 1930s by the last king of Rwanda to live in Rwanda, so Mutara III Rudahigwa. And he lived there until about 1959 when he died, and his wife Queen Rosalie lived there until unfortunately the genocide when she was murdered. But you can look around both, so you can see the really old traditional thatched palace and go inside what was considered to be the height of modernity at that time, because I mean it had a bathtub, and very few places in Rwanda had a bathtub in the 1930s, and plumbing and modern toilets and a garage to fix his cars, you know. It gives you kind of that complete juxtaposition of ancient history and modern history. And finally, you have to pay a little bit extra, but I say it's completely worth doing this, is if you pay a little bit extra, you can go and visit the royal cows. So cows in Rwanda are very sacred. Milk is highly prized. And the king had a huge collection, a huge herd of cattle. And the thing about the royal cows is that the royal cows produce the milk for the palace. They're never slaughtered, they're given burial when they die, and they have a special keeper who comes out and sings to them.
umukobwa wayibonye mu gitondo nimugoroba aza kuyitashya ngo isa nk'iyabyawe na rusengo rwa muvunyi
And it's just amazing. It's really incredible to see, because cows in Rwanda are not like cows in the UK. These guys have got horns like this, you know. I mean, it's hard to understand how they can lift their head off the ground once they put it down. So yeah, cows. And, you know, I've been there a few times, and one occasion we got to try the milk because they'd just been milked, and another occasion there were some baby cows there, little baby coos, and we got to see those. And it's just a really, really nice place to go. If I had one criticism, I've been there maybe 5 or 6 times, maybe about 5 times now. And what I have noticed is that the quality of the guide material that you get is, it can be a bit hit and miss. So I've been a couple of times and we've had a guide who was very confident in English and really knew his history. I mean, you could tell he was passionate about the history, and he told us all about these fascinating things that, you know, you wouldn't know otherwise. And then I've been a couple of times and the guide either hasn't been confident enough in English to kind of explain what things are, or didn't actually know. And you could kind of see he was sort of standing in on a day job. So it's kind of difficult. One thing I really wish they'd do there, I wish that they'd do the same thing that they do at Kigali Genocide Memorial at Gisozi, where you can get an audio tour. And you go around and you press the button, and so everybody's getting the same information and you don't miss anything. And that would be really great, because, you know, not everybody in Rwanda is confident enough in English to deliver a tour on history in English. And not everybody, you know, knows all of the little details of somewhere. Some people are more interested in history than others. So I think if you had that audio guide, then everybody would get the same information. But I guess my thing is, if you do go and there isn't an audio guide, don't be afraid to ask. If there's something that you see and you're really interested in, ask what it is, and hopefully the guide will try to explain to you. So another place that you can visit in the south is the Ethnographic Museum at Hue. So Hue used to be Butare, it's now Hue, which is also the name of the district. So it's a really nice modern museum where you can go in, you can look at archaeological artifacts, geographical and geological artifacts, and cultural information about the entire region. So it's a really interesting place just to stop off and give yourself a good couple of hours, because there's just so much information in there. And Hue itself is the main campus town for Rwanda. So this is where the University of Rwanda is based, and loads of students, a very friendly, kind of lively atmosphere, and a nice place to stop off if you're going further south. So one of the things that southern Rwanda is best known for is Nyungwe National Park. And I have an embarrassing admission to make, is I've never actually been into Nyungwe. In all the years I've lived here, I've been through it, because if you go on a bus from Kigali to the south to Cyangugu, you pass through the Nyungwe National Park, but I've never actually been into it. And once lockdown finishes, I definitely want to do that. So 2 things that I guess it's best known for. Well, you can go hiking there. But 2 of the big things is they have a canopy walk called Iggy Sheki Sheki. And you remember it as Iggy Shaking Shaking because it's a canopy walk. But I think it actually means something like ferns, or the fern walk in Kinyarwanda. I'd need to check that. But I really, really want to do that. But for some reason, I've just never been. I think that's the problem. When you live somewhere, anywhere in the world, you can live in the most amazing, fascinating place, but if you live there long term, you get into this sort of cycle of you just stay home. It's doing your daily life, and you don't go and see all the things that you should do. So yes, I want to go and see that. And the second thing that Nyungwe is famous for is reportedly having the furthest source of the River Nile. So if you're into hiking and walking, that's something to go and check out. Unfortunately, I can't really say much more about it because I haven't done it. So the last place that I'm going to talk about in southern Rwanda is a place called Murambe. Now, Murambe is a genocide memorial. It was a technical college that had just been built, it had just been completed when the genocide began. And people in the local area were told to run to the technical college for safety. And they thought that they would be safe there because there were French troops there. And unfortunately, they weren't safe and they weren't protected. And estimates of between 40 to 50,000 people lost their life in that region. Now, I'm not going to include any pictures here. If you're curious, you can Google Murambe. And I went here with my dad in 2008. So when he came to visit, I wanted to show my family all of Rwanda. I wanted to show them everything. I wanted to show them the very best, the most fun parts. So we went to see the gorillas and the Mwami Palace, but I also wanted to show the more recent past and the more difficult parts of Rwandan history. And so we decided to go down to Murambe, and this was 2008, so it wasn't really very developed at that time. And the difficult part about Murambe is that with many of the memorials that you go to, so if you go to the Hill of Resistance in Western Province, if you go to Kigali Memorial Centre, you will see remains, you will see human remains, you will see skulls, you will see bones of the people who have died. And at Murambe, the bodies that are there are mostly of people from the local area that were brought to the technical centre afterwards. The people who were there at the time have been buried in mass graves, and the remains of other people locally were brought to Murambe and kept there. And the bodies have been limed. So what you're seeing is not just the bones of the people, it's the limed bodies of people laid out in each of the rooms in the technical college. And when I went there, like I said, there wasn't really any boards or any explanation or any lead up. And in 2008, it was literally you turned up and somebody opened the door and you looked at the bodies, and they closed the door and they opened the next door and you looked at the bodies, and you kept going until you said stop, which was pretty quickly, I think by about the second room. The thing that I find, the more difficult part I find for me, because I have to say, when somebody has been limed, they're sort of, they're shriveled. They look like paper, they look like papier-mâché. They don't really look like a human being at that point. Whereas I think for me, inside was more difficult, because inside Morambe there are shelves and shelves of clothes. So these are the clothes that the victims were wearing on the day that they died. And they're called the poor clothes because these are the clothes that the people who killed them didn't bother to steal because they didn't think that they were worth it. And to me, I find that more upsetting because I feel like clothes are something very, very personal. You know, they're an expression of you whilst you're alive. They're the colours that you like to wear. They're the thing that you look smartest in. They're the thing that you feel comfortable in. You know, and every day we wake up and we get dressed and we choose our clothes, and we might not know that that will be our last day. And, you know, now Morambe is a difficult place to visit. And even if you think that you're emotionally prepared for it, what I would suggest is when you visit any memorial on this scale, you don't book anything immediately after it. You need some time. You need to go somewhere, have something to eat, sit down, be quiet for a while and process what you see. I think, you know, it's not something that you put on your itinerary and then you go and do something immediately afterwards. You need a bit of time. I am going to do a separate video about visiting genocide memorials. I've either worked in or visited about 4 countries that have undergone genocide, and I have visited memorials in those places. So I'm going to do a separate video about that and about, you know, handling that kind of extremely visceral, emotional kind of reaction that I think most of us get. And that's the thing, you can be mentally prepared before you go. You've read the history, you've seen some photos, you roughly know what to expect. But there's a difference between thinking that you know what to expect and coming face to face with something in the moment. It can be quite emotionally affecting. But again, I think it's really, really important to remember that these memorial sites exist for you to visit, for you to go, for you to see, for you to learn, and for you to ask questions. You are welcome to be there, and it is important that you take those feelings and those understandings away with you. And you know, it's a huge reminder to all of us about the importance of human rights, about the importance of protecting the peace and civility that we have, which especially in these particularly emotionally charged times and these uncertain times is an extremely, extremely important lesson to retain. So I'd just like to mention that since 2008, Morambe have really done up their visitors centre and reception area, so there's now a lot more information there, and you can learn about the history before you enter the rest of the complex. You can also take a 3D tour of the centre, and I've put the link to that below. So yeah, I think Southern Province is perhaps one of the most interesting parts of Rwanda, just because it's got such a range of things. It's got nature in Nyungwe, it's got the ancient history of the Mwami Palace, and you've got Morambe, which is a very stark reminder of more recent history. So it's got kind of some of the happiest places and some of the harshest places in Rwanda to see. So my suggestion, it's really easy to go from Kigali down to Huye to the Ethnographic Museum and back up past Nyanza Mwami Palace. And you could do that in a day if you wanted to. You could probably travel down to Morambe in a day. But like I say, I don't think you really want to do anything after that, except sit and think. So, you know, you could always do Nyanza Mwami Palace and the Ethnographic Museum, stay over at Huye, and then go and do Morambe and come back to Kigali after that. So yeah, if there's anything you feel I've really missed out on Southern Province, please do leave it in the comments. If there's something else that's really worth going to see there, or if you go and visit any of these, tell me about your experience. And if you've enjoyed this, do give it a like and subscribe. Thank you. Hello! So we're out of full lockdown again in Rwanda, though we've still got a curfew. But I was going to continue with the desktop tour of Rwanda. So looking at all the places that I like to go when the country's open and we're all free to travel. So this week we're going to Western Province, and this is probably my favourite province in the whole of Rwanda. So last episode I told you about Nyanza Mwami Palace in southern Rwanda, and that is probably my favourite tourist destination, so my favourite tourist site to go to. But my favourite province overall is probably the West, just because it is stunningly, stunningly beautiful. So in the first episode I was talking about Gisenyi and how it's a bit of a party town. You go up there to the beaches and the beachside bars. Well, this time Kironge, Kibuye, the western side, it's kind of like Gisenyi but on tranquilizers. So it's a bit more peaceful. It's somewhere that people just go to relax, maybe write a novel, stare at the water, paint a picture. So I've mentioned a few places that are little known tourist spots in Rwanda, such as the floating bridge of Bugesera. And on the road from Kigali to Kironge, there is another one. It's really hard to explain where it is. It's called Shoots and Daba, but thankfully it's now appearing on Google Maps, so you can type it in and find it and go there. And the reason that it's kind of hard to describe where it is it's along one of the many, many winding roads as you're approaching Kironge, and there's just a bend in the road where you can park your car. And there used to be a signpost, I think, but last time I was there, I don't think there was. So you wouldn't know that it's there if somebody didn't tell you. And Shoots and Daba is this massive waterfall that just goes whoosh down the side of the road into this incredible ravine. It's really, really beautiful. But if you're afraid of heights, maybe don't get too close to the edge. And whenever you stop off there, you'll find yourself very quickly mobbed by a group of local children. And what they do is they sing and they make music and they tell you the story about the history, the mythology of Shoots and Daba.
My name is Dea. My name is Dea forever. My name is Dea. My name is Dea. My name is Dea forever.
Now you might not catch it all at the time, but from what I understand, from what I've heard, the waterfall is named after Ndaba, and Ndaba went out to collect honey. So he was a beekeeper, he collected honey. And he saw that there was a nest right down, halfway down that waterfall. And he decided that he was going to go over the waterfall to try and get it. So he tied a rope and he started walking down the back of the waterfall, and he was reaching and reaching and reaching, and he fell and he got washed away by the waterfall. So not a happy ending there for Mr. Ndaba, but I think it's a morality story about, you know, not being greedy, not trying to take more than you can get. That's my understanding of the story, but like I say, it's sometimes a bit hard to hear everything, so if anybody else knows a different story or knows the full story, please do leave it in the comments. Now, after you've looked at the waterfall, it's customary just to give the kids a little bit of money, you know, not too much, a bit of change if you've got it, a couple of $1,000 just for them to share. They will often try and ask you for a lot more, but, you know, it's up to you what you feel comfortable giving. So when you get to Kibuye, to Kironge, there are some beautiful places to stay. Now, I always tend to mention Bethany, Hotel Bethany, because in the entire 14 years that I've been going to Kibuye, that has always been an institution. So it's the first place that I ever stayed when I went to Kibuye all those years ago as a VSA volunteer. And it's kind of not really changed much over the years. It's a fairly basic hotel. It's got some smaller rooms that are a bit cheaper, I think around 15 or 20,000 francs a night. And then for about 30 or 40,000, they have these little chalets that are right down on the lakeside, and they've got like private little patios that are just on the lakeside with flowers, and it's beautiful. And that is the whole selling point of Bethany. It is literally right on the edge of Lake Kivu. So their restaurant area is really, really nice. You can sit there and have a beer and just look at the water. You can also go swimming there. Check my other videos about the whole Belhartsia issue. But, you know, I swim there sometimes, and it's just a very, very relaxing, nice place to be. However, I will say it's definitely not wheelchair accessible, and you do need to be kind of fit to stay there, because some of the cabins and the chalets are kind of up these very steep steps, and I mean steep steps. So you have to be kind of willing to trudge up and down to go to reception and back. But I like the place. It is basic. It's very basic. Sometimes there isn't running water. Sometimes you have to ask them to bring water in a bucket if you want to wash. Sometimes there is water. It is what it is. And just the view is very, very nice. Then a couple of years ago, my friend Harris introduced me to Riza Village. And I think that might just have become my new favourite. It's quite close to the water. There's a bit of a garden sloping down to the lake. But the thing that just completely sells this is that you've got these beautiful little wooden cabins on stilts, and you have balconies, and you just look out across the lake, and it is stunningly beautiful. So I really like it there. You know, when I visited before, there were a couple of small things, is that they don't always have cold beer at the time, and avoid Fridays, because we found out that on Fridays they have a cattle market where people come across on boat from Congo with animals to sell at the market. So sort of Thursday night, Friday morning, Friday was really loud. Literally the cattle market was right next to the hotel, and you just heard the animals all night. So try and avoid that, but other days of the week it's totally peaceful, a really, really gorgeous view. And talking about boats, you can get a boat ride both from Bethany and from Riza Village, and you can go out around these beautiful volcanic islands that are just green and lush and beautiful. And there's one called Napoleon Island, which is basically shaped like Napoleon's bicorn hat. And the thing about Napoleon's Island is it's known for the bat population. So there are these huge bats that live on Napoleon Island. And you can take a couple of hours trip over there and walk around the island and see the bats and the giant millipedes, which I really like. That might creep some people out, but I like giant millipedes. I always have. So yeah, that's worth seeing. But there are other islands, so you can take a shorter boat ride of about an hour to somewhere like Amahoro Island and just walk around it, and it's really, really nice. So definitely do that. And you can also see, if you go from Riza Village, you can also see the brand new gas power plant. So Lake Kivu, if you remember my video about Nyiragongo volcano going off, you will probably remember that Lake Kivu has a lot of natural gas under it, and there is a power station in Karonge which extracts that gas and turns it into energy for Rwanda. So you can sometimes get a glimpse of that. So the final sort of hotel worth mentioning, I guess, is a place called Kivu Lodge. And I've never actually stayed there because it looks kind of expensive. They've got a helicopter pad at the end of the garden. Yeah, so it might be a bit expensive, but it's definitely worth just driving out to look at it. Anybody can go there. It's on the end of a peninsula, so it's a bit of a rocky drive. For pretty much most places that are out of the way in Rwanda, you will need a 4x4. And it's worth just going there because they have this really nice pool, and again it just looks out over Lake Kivu, and you can spend a really nice afternoon there, have a meal, relax. Like I said, the pool's really nice and it's very close, so if you've got children they can play, and you can keep an eye on them, and it's quite a nice family environment. Now, Western Province is definitely somewhere that you go to look at the water, to take a boat ride, to explore the volcanic islands, and just to enjoy the scenery. There aren't really that many other big things like the safaris in Eastern Province, Nyanza Mwami Palace, the actual big kind of touristy things to do. But there is another tea estate. So I mentioned Funda in Northern Province. There is Gisovu in Western Province. Now, Gisovu is apparently, so I've been told, one of the most beautiful tea gardens in the world. And it's up a very, very steep hill. So it's actually quite cold up there. And I went a few years ago with my friend. We went to visit somebody there, and we saw the most incredible sunrise up over the tea fields, and there were just pockets of mist all over the tea field, and I could fully understand why it is known as one of the most beautiful tea gardens in the world. Now, as far as I know, they used to have a guest house. I think that guest house was closed for a while, but it's worth contacting them. Maybe they still rent it out. And you could go and stay in the guest house and ride a bicycle about and just enjoy being on the tea estate. Like I say, I'm not sure if tourists can still do that now, but contact them, you never know. They've also got a shop where you can buy tea on your way out the door. Now, Gisovu, the tea estate, is very close to a place called Bisesero. Now, I've mentioned some of the memorials in Rwanda before, such as Murambe, and Bisesero is another memorial in Western Province. It's known as the Hill of Resistance. So during '94, during the genocide, a group of people got together and tried to hold out for as long as they could on this mountain. So they were being hunted with guns, and they were fighting back with whatever they could find, so sticks and rocks. And they lasted for almost 3 months. Unfortunately, they didn't all survive, but they lasted for almost 3 months. And so Bisesero is a viewing point. It's a steep hill that you can go up to look at and view the Hill of Resistance, and there's a memorial at the top. Again, you do need to be quite fit. It is a pretty steep hill, and as you go up, you go through little rooms that include some human remains. So, if you're visiting that direction, you're going up to Gisovu, you might come down past Bisesero. So really, that is my brief overview of Western Province. And as I say, I like Western Province the most just because I think it's so beautiful. When you're sitting on the edge of Lake Kivu and you're looking at those volcanic mountains, looking out across the lake, it's just gorgeous. So if you think that there's anything really major that I've missed out of Western Province, or if you go and try any of these places, do let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this, please give it a like and subscribe. So today I'm doing my final desktop tour installment. So during COVID in Kigali, I have been amusing myself by talking about some of the places that I like to visit in the country when everything's open, when it's okay to travel about. So since beginning that series with Northern Province, I have been through another full lockdown and I've had a vaccination. So it's going well so far. We're out of lockdown now. And my final instalment, we've done north, east, south, west. So now we're coming to the 5th province, Kigali. So if you've never been to Kigali before, it's kind of a small city. You can get just about anywhere in 20 minutes. And that's nice because it's homey. If you live here, you know everybody, you feel like it's an easy place to live. However, for tourists, there isn't really that much to do. So most people, they'll come to Kigali, stay a couple of nights, go and do whatever else they're doing in the country, which is usually the gorillas, and then they'll come back to Kigali before they fly home. And, you know, I love the city. It's a wonderful place to live, but there aren't that many things to keep tourists here. So I put together my 5 kind of top things that you probably should try and do whilst you're here. Number 1, Kigali Memorial. So in 1994, Rwanda experienced a genocide in which around 1 million people were killed over the space of 100 days. Now, most people, when they visit Rwanda, they do know something about the recent past. Maybe they've read a book, maybe they've watched a film, and they have some idea of what happened in '94. But it's a really good idea to take a day and to go and visit the Memorial Centre, the National Memorial Centre at Gisozi in Kigali. It's really easy to get to from the centre of town, and it's really, really well laid out. So when you arrive, you can get an audio guide, which I think is free, or you can just decide to walk around and to read the information on the boards. So you start by going into a side room where you're shown a video explaining the build-up to genocide, the political situation around that, and also including survivor testimony. Now, it is quite an emotional experience. If you've been to another genocide memorial such as Auschwitz, you might be prepared for it. If you haven't, just take into account that even though you think you know what you're going to see and you think that you will be fine afterwards, it's a good idea to take the rest of the afternoon off. So if you go to visit in the morning, don't book something immediately afterwards, because you will probably need some time to relax and to consider what you've seen and just to kind of bring your mind back from the past into the present. As I say, if you've visited other genocide memorials around the world, you might have some experience of this. If not, just be prepared. So inside the memorial is split into 2 parts. So the downstairs area, you go down the steps and you start with this really detailed walkthrough that explains the history of Rwanda from pre-colonial times through to colonization, through to the build-up to genocide, the genocide itself, and then the aftermath of that. And that takes you through into a little room. And in that room, there are little segments that you can go into, smaller rooms. One of them has a video about survivors' testimony and what they have been through. Another one includes clothes, another has human remains, and the final one has got pictures which survivors have brought of their family members who were killed. And they're often the only pictures that the family had of that person. And so the centre is there for both education, that anybody who wants to can go there and to learn about the history, but it's also there as a place for survivors to come together, to grieve on Memorial Day, to remember and to memorialise the people that they've lost. So it's, you know, there's a lot of aspects to the centre, and there's also an archive there which documents survivors' testimonies and keeps that for posterity. So when you finish downstairs, then you go upstairs, and there are 2 rooms. The one on the left is the children's room. Now you don't have to go in there, you don't have to go into any specific sections, you can choose what you want to look at. If you do decide to go in there, that to me is probably the hardest room to go through. It's an area where parents have brought pictures of their children who were killed, usually very young children and infants. And along with the picture, you learn a bit about each child. So what their favourite toys were, what their favourite food was, what they enjoyed in life, and then how they were killed. And that is a particularly emotionally affecting room. And again, a reason that I say you don't really want to go and see the memorial and then walk straight out and go and do something else, because your mind won't go with you as quickly as your body will. So yes, again, you need a bit of time to process what you're looking at and seeing. But on the other side is a room that I think is really, really important. It's a room that documents genocides around the world. So it covers Armenia, Cambodia, Croatia, many different genocides that have happened in human history. And I think that's such an important room because it's too easy to look at a country and say, oh, well, you know, that's something that happened over there. You know, that's sort of a Rwandan problem or a Cambodian problem. And that room kind of brings it home and makes it a human problem and something that, you know, it brings home the reason why it's important to learn about these things and why it's important to try to protect against them in the future. So yes, that's a very important room. Now, I suggest you need probably a good couple of hours, maybe a bit longer, to go through Gisozi and to absorb the information. And when you've finished, you can go out to the back where there is a cafe and you can sit and have a coffee and just sort of absorb what you've seen before going on to your next destination. Now, if you want to leave the memorial and go and sit somewhere else, you could go to Hotel Milcolin. Now, if you've seen the film Hotel Rwanda, that wasn't really received very well here, but Hotel Milcolin, the original Hotel Rwanda, is an actual place and it does exist and you can visit it, and it's right in the centre of town, so you can come down the hill from Gisozi and go and visit that hotel. Now, there isn't really anything touristy there, so there's no information telling you about the hotel. There is a very small commemorative plaque at the back of the car park on the right as you go in, but otherwise it is just a normal hotel today. And you can go in and you can go down the steps in the lobby and you will come out in the pool area where there is a bar and you can get something to drink and something to eat and just sit and come back down to earth again after the memorial. 2. Nyamirambo Women's Project. Okay, so moving on to something a little bit more cheerful. If this is your first time in Kigali and you want to go out and about, you want to see the city at street level and just, you know, absorb the atmosphere, then I highly recommend the walking tour by Nyamirambo Women's Centre. So I took my mum and her partner Merrick a couple of years ago when they came to visit, and we just had a really nice time. So you start off in this room where you say hello to everybody and you learn some basic Kinyarwanda phrases. So hello, how are you? And it's a great introduction not just to the city but also to the language. Then we went on a walking tour where we got to look at some of the local businesses in Nyamirambo. So we visited a milk shop and a hairdresser's. We walked down some of the back streets and into the food shops. And we also got to see some women who were pounding cassava leaves. And so it was just a really nice, very relaxed, very safe introduction to the streets of Kigali. And I think it really helps, especially if you're new to Africa, you're new to Rwanda, and you know, you don't always know what to expect from a city. And it was just a nice, relaxing way to ease into the country. And then at the end, we came together for a huge traditional melange. So melange is just a buffet which contains a little bit of every type of local food. So cassava dough, matoke, which is a type of savoury banana, you know, rice and beans, and traditionally cooked Rwandan food, which again was just a really nice introduction to the country. Now, I'll put all of the links and the information below, and I just really recommend it as something to go and do for half a day in Kigali. And again, you're going around with a local guide, so you get to ask your questions. If there's something that you want to know about, you can get that information without feeling uncomfortable or awkward about asking. 3. Azizi Life. So Azizi Life is an arts cooperative, and they've got a studio in Kimihurura, which is really close to the convention centre and Kigali Heights. And you might remember that I talked about Imigongo in a previous video, which is a type of art that's really specific to Rwanda. And you can actually go and have a go at making Imigongo art at the Azizi Life studio. And they also do basket weaving, so you can spend an afternoon just doing arts and crafts and learning how to make local arts and crafts and handcrafts at Azizi Life. So that's just a really nice, relaxed way to spend a couple of hours, and also really family friendly. Now, if you continue down the road that Azizi Life is on, you will come to a large building on the left which houses Ikirezi Bookstore, which has a large selection of books in French and English, and Inzora Rooftop Cafe, where you can get a coffee and sit on the roof and just relax and read the books that you've just bought. 4. Habyarimana's Palace. Okay, I wasn't sure whether or not to include this one, but I'm going to, just because it is an incredible building. Though it isn't what it used to be. So, in '94, when the genocide began, it was triggered when a plane crashed near Kanombe Airport. And the plane was carrying the then president of Rwanda, Juvenal Habyarimana, and the president of Burundi, Cyprien Ntaryamira. And it came down just at the bottom of President Habyarimana's house. Now, Habyarimana's home is actually open to the public. It's a national museum, and you can go there and you can look at the plane crash site, which I think is now actually a crested crane sanctuary. And up until the beginning of about 2020, so 25 years after the genocide, you could get a guided tour of the house, and they would tell you all of the information, all of the history of the house. And it is the strangest house you have ever seen. So what makes it strange? There's a snake pit in the garden. And I believe that, if I remember correctly, Habyarimana was gifted a giant python by the president of DRC. And there's some folklore, some mythology around it, that after the plane crashed, the snake disappeared, and people thought that perhaps the soul of Habyarimana had gone into the snake and escaped. In the upstairs, so the building is very strange, so the upstairs feels bigger than the downstairs. It's kind of got this TARDIS quality about it. But there's an entire room in the attic dedicated to where Habyarimana used to meet with his witch doctor to get advice about how to run the country. And there's so many bathrooms. So this was in a time, he built this house in a time when houses in Rwanda didn't have running water, didn't have bathtubs or showers or refrigerators. And so kind of to display that wealth, almost every second room was a bathroom. And we used to joke, I went there a few times, and we used to joke, it's like sort of, reception, hallway, bathroom. Hallway, bathroom, 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 hallway, bathroom, bathroom, hidden gun cupboard, bathroom, bathroom, bathroom. And it was just sort of a very strange, I should explain, the hidden gun cupboard. There was a room for the children to sit and watch television. And it's a beautifully sort of wooden sort of background kind of room, really nicely put together. And the reason it was all sort of made out of wood and nicely done is to conceal the fact that behind the television was a massive gun cupboard, just in case anybody ever broke into the compound. So the children would be sitting there watching cartoons in the morning, and behind the cartoons was like a massive arsenal of weapons. So that's what I mean by the fact it is the strangest building, and it is utterly, utterly unique. And then around 2019, which was 25 years after the genocide, it was kind of decided that, that part of history should really probably be put to bed, and perhaps not promoted as a tourist destination, which is completely understandable. And instead what they did was they moved the National Art Gallery from Nyanza, near the Nyanza Mwami Palace, to Habyarimana's palace, and now it is the National Art Gallery. And whereas I do understand the reasoning for that, I really do, I fully accept that, I feel that more could have been made of that transition, because the National Art Gallery, There are one or two pieces in there that are amazing. So there's an incredible Rwandan artist called Daddy Ashimwe, and his work is just stunning. I mean, stunningly good. I could look at that all day. But on the whole, the art gallery, it's not exactly what you'd expect of a national standard art gallery, which is a bit of a shame. You know, I think there's a lot more they could do there, like a sculpture trail through the grounds, and maybe some bigger named artists from across the region, some really kind of powerful pieces. Or even, you know, having a room like they do at Azizi Life and getting Azizi Life in there so that people can practice making imigongo and traditional art when they visit. Yeah, because last time I went, I don't think there was even a cafe. So I don't know. The problem I think I find is that it's quite a long way out of town. It takes you about 25 minutes on a moto from the centre of town to get there. Well, 20, 25. And I just feel that, you know, as an art gallery, it's not somewhere that you could really make the effort to go to visit. Whereas I think when it was Habyarimana's palace, it was just so unique and so strange and so fascinating that you would actually get on a moto and go to see it specifically. So that's just my kind of feeling about it. I think it's a really fascinating building. If you go there, I don't think anybody now will tell you about any of the history of it, and I don't think that you can go to the upstairs anymore. But, you know, if you already know the history of it, and you can probably find more about it online, it might be worth just popping over there and having a little look and enjoying the art whilst you're there. 5. Abumwe Hotel. So Abumwe Hotel is just this big hotel in the centre of the city that's quite close to Milkaline, but you can go up to the top and on the roof you get a stunning view of the city. So they have a pool up there, but I think you can only use that if you're staying at the hotel, but I think you can still walk up there, and on that side with the pool you can see City Hall and everything on that side of the city, and on the bar side you can have a cocktail and look down on Milkaline, on the centre of town, the central roundabout, and everything on that side of the city. And if you go up there on a clear afternoon and watch the sunset, it's beautiful. And something that I love about Kigali are the lights. So there are so many hills in Kigali that at night time you just see these sparkly little lights everywhere. And it reminds me when I was a kid, I went to Euro Disney with my dad, and there was the Peter Pan ride, which you sat in. It was like you were sitting on a boat, and as it took off, you looked down on this model town and you just saw all of these little lights beneath you as you went over it. And it always just reminds me a bit of that when you're on Abumwe Hotel at night, because you just look out across the city and it's just little twinkling lights everywhere. So I just really like it up there. There is another place that you can get quite a nice view of the sunset. There's a building in town called T2000 or Tedu Mill, which is basically a giant supermarket. But on the top of the supermarket, there is a Chinese restaurant called Bamboo. And you can sit there, and again, you get a really, really nice view of the city as the sun's going down. So going somewhere with a good view of a sunset is always a good idea in Kigali, especially if there's food and a cocktail. So basically that's my list of some things to do in Kigali if you've got a couple of days spare. And I know it's not exhaustive, and if there's something that you really like doing or something that I've missed that you feel people should go and see, just drop a comment below. And if you go and try any of these things, let me know how it goes. So that's the end of my desktop tour of Rwanda, which coincides with a lot of the restrictions now lifting. I've had a lot of fun making it. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've maybe learnt something. Not the most polished videos you're going to see on YouTube, but you know, working on it. So if you have enjoyed it, please do like and subscribe, and I hope that you enjoy visiting Rwanda someday.